Well, good Monday afternoon to everyone. Brother David Harrison here on the 3M Institute. Going to get into the Word of God tonight. I hope you're doing well. Take just a little time for you to get logged in here. And it's about 4 minutes before we're going to start, so I always come on a little bit early to make sure everything's good to go and give everyone a chance to be notified. So, hope you've had a good day. I've had a busy day. We had to take a trip today back to my back doctor in North Carolina. So we left, I guess, before 7, and my appointment was at 10:30. So we got there about 10:15 and saw the doctor and did their thing, and then come back and got home about 3 o'clock today. So it's been a long day, 8 hours down there and back about it. And then I come home. We had a late lunch, leftovers from yesterday, warmed up and had a bite to eat. And then I've been studying this afternoon for this podcast because I'm really excited, a little nervous about it. I got a lot of things I want to talk about, but I'm not going to get much done. Don't look like it's too much material. But anyway, as you're logging in, be sure and share this. Hit the share button and let others know that we are on the air. And thank you so much for tuning in. Hope you had a good weekend, good Father's Day, and good Monday to kick off another week. It's hard to believe this is June the 16th. Over half of June is already gone. It is hard to believe. Time is flying by. Hey, Miss Phyllis, I've been praying for you, special prayer. I got your request of the night, been praying for you. God knows the needs. And so anyway, I went to the back doctor today, and you're quite welcome, sis. You're quite welcome. We all need each other to pray. That's one thing for sure. So I had my shot last week, and the shot helped a little bit, but still my back is really in a lot of pain. So this doctor I'm seeing now is not my regular doctor. My regular doctor is on the long sabbatical. I'm not sure when he's coming back or if he's coming back. Nobody's saying anything. It's kind of closed mouth, and so I've got this other doctor. I've seen him before. It's been a long time, but he's a good guy. But he totally took another direction. He's totally against trying the spinal stimulator. He said that won't do any good. The shot did a little good last week, and he said we can do those when you need them. But he wants me to start physical therapy, so they've already called me for next week, and so I start PT next Tuesday, 2 days a week for 15 weeks. So not looking forward to that. My energy level is about 0. And I'm not sure how physical therapy is going to take away my back pain when I got steel, titanium, and so many things happening in my back that I can barely walk and move, and he wants me to take physical therapy. So I will try it, and if it works, fine. If it doesn't work, then Medicare will just have wasted a bunch of money. So anyway, but we'll try to follow the doctor's advice. So anyway, we're going to change gears tonight. I had announced on Facebook that we were going to be covering in hermeneutics tonight the biblical principle of the predictive principle, which deals with how the Bible predicts things and how that when we can, as we're reading the Bible, we can see things that are going to happen. We can kind of go ahead and see how God's going to work this out. The predictive principle. It's not the same as prophecy, but predictive. You just have to wait till I go over it. And I will pick it back up again Friday probably, unless we stay on this. But I have been really studying the last couple weeks on this Ezekiel 38, 39 chapters. And so you'll know when I get started why I chose to do that tonight. And thank you, Miss Phyllis. I'm praying for God to heal me too. Hey, son. So I've been studying for quite a while on this Ezekiel 38 and 39, and I'm just going to start. And just by giving you a little background, when I was in Bible college, and even most of the books I've got a library full of books, and I read Charles Feinstein. He came to the college when I was in college. He was a Jew, and he knew, I forget, it was like 20 different languages. He could speak fluently 20 different languages. It was unbelievable. One of the most brilliant men I ever met. And he's got a commentary on Ezekiel. And it's one of the best I've ever read. But I pulled it out, and I've been reading. Of course, he wrote it back when Israel was just a new nation, and the Soviet Union had not yet fallen apart. You know, the wall was still up. And so everything in there is kind of outdated. And so then I had another book on Daniel by John Phillips. And John Phillips, his book was written many, many years ago, right about the time the Soviet Union was breaking apart. But some of his stuff is kind of not up current to where we are. And he holds to a view that I don't hold to, and I'll go into that. But I've been really bothered by this chapter 30 and 39 because I was in Bible college, and I was trying to find my notes. I've got notes from Bible college. I've got all the booklets and everything somewhere packed up in a box here. And I looked through 4 or 5 boxes, didn't see it, just looking for it quickly, and I couldn't find it. But I'll find it. If I do, then I'll come back to it. But I was taught in Bible college that chapter 38 and 39, in some cases, some professors said it was the same battle as the Battle of Gog and Magog in the book of Revelation 20, because it's got the same name. And then some likened it to, connected to the Battle of Armageddon at the end of the tribulation period. But as I've studied all of Ezekiel 38 and 39, it doesn't fit. It doesn't fit any of those. Let me give you a couple things to think about. There are several battles mentioned in the Bible. You got this battle here in Ezekiel 38 and 39, the Battle of Gog and Magog. That's a battle that God clearly, and let's just look where it is. In chapter 37 of Ezekiel, that's the valley of the dry bones. You remember where God said he's going to raise it. That's a picture of the redemption of the nation of Israel. When God revives the nation of Israel, he pulls them up the valley of the dead bones. So that's when Israel is redeemed. They come back out of Babylonian captivity and promises them more than just out of Babylonian captivity. They're going to be restored. And then you got the battle of, in chapter 38 and 39, you say, well, maybe it's already taken place. Well, there's nothing in history that sounds anything like chapter 38 and 39. It's not taking place, and I'll prove that in a little bit. And then in chapter 40 through 48, what do you have? You have the temple, which is the millennium temple being rebuilt. And it has the millennium. That's the millennial temple. That's worship in the millennial. And so you go from the nation being redeemed in chapter 37 to the battle of chapter 38 and 39 to the millennium in chapter 40 through 48. So, and you've got several battles here. This is one battle, the battle of Gog and Magog. Then you go over to the book of Revelation in chapter 19, 18 and 19, you've got the battle of Armageddon. And then the third battle that's mentioned is the battle of Gog and Magog, another battle called Gog and Magog. And it is in the chapter 20 of Revelation, and it is at the end of the millennium. God makes it very clear. He said Satan's loose for a season. He's given a chance to deceive the whole world, and he deceives the large numbers of the sand of the sea. And then God destroys Satan with his armies. So let's look at what we're doing here. In Ezekiel 38 and 39, these are armies that are coming down against Israel. That's the text. In Revelation chapter 19, this is Jesus Christ coming against the armies of the Antichrist at Armageddon. In the battle of Gog and Magog in Revelation chapter 20, that is God attacking Satan and the armies of the nations he's pulled together in a conspiracy against God after the millennium. Because here's the argument of man. Give me a world that's perfect. Put a perfect king on the throne, and then I'll be perfect. Because I'm the object of my environment. So God gives them a world that is run by a perfect King Jesus, a world that is peace, and the depravity and the curse of nature has been lifted. And so give you that for 1,000 years, and then after the 1,000 years, God led Satan out of the bottomless pit, and for a season, short season, he deceives people in their natural bodies that did not receive Christ in the millennium, did not put their faith in Jesus Christ. Some of them were born in the millennium, because those are all natural body people that come out of the tribulation. That's those sheep and goat nations. God judges the sheep and goat nations. The sheep nations go into the millennium in their natural bodies. We are on earth in our glorified bodies, ruling out of the New Jerusalem. Jesus is ruling, and we're ruling with him. And those people are in their natural bodies, and they're having babies. The Bible says the young will die 100 years old. And Jesus will resurrect people during that time. They'll be touched and healed, the healing of the nations. You've got the tree there in the Jerusalem. That's the healing of the nations. People come up and can be healed, come up every year to worship. That's the 1,000 years. So there'll be a lot of people born in natural bodies, but a lot of them will not believe on Christ by faith. They'll just live in a good world with a perfect world and a perfect king, but they will not trust him. When Satan comes along, because they've not put their faith, it's kind of like Adam in the garden. Adam had the tree of life and he had the tree of knowledge of good and evil. He took of the knowledge of the tree of knowledge of good and evil and he failed. But he never did take of the tree of life. He could have. The whole time he was there, he could have eaten of the tree of life and lived forever, but he didn't. And the whole 1,000 years, these people are going to live in the millennium. Some will be born. They could very well believe on Jesus Christ, but they don't. They just enjoy life and have a good, in a perfect world, and everything's fine. But when Satan comes back on the scene out of the bottomless pit, then he deceives a multitude as the sand of the sea. That's the final argument against man, where God says, I prove to you that man is no good no matter what his environment is. I give you a perfect world and a perfect king, and he still failed. And so God judges Satan and the armies. That's all the nations of the world that come against him from all four corners of the earth. So 3 distinct battles, 3 different people that are heading up those battles. The first battle, hey, Miss Christina, Rajiz, my son, others on here, thank you for all watching. So you got 3 different battles, the battle of Gog and Magog in Ezekiel. That's led by the nation, the conspiracy of nations that come down against Israel. You've got the battle of Armageddon, that Jesus Christ comes back at the second coming to destroy the armies of the Antichrist at Armageddon. That is in the valley of Jezreel, the valley of Megiddo. Then you've got the battle of Gog and Magog at the end of the 1,000-year reign, where God destroys the armies of Satan that are deceived and follow Satan after he's released out of the bottomless pit. So 3 different battles. So here's where I've been struggling for the last month or so, and all the Bible prophecies that's being fulfilled. It's when does this battle of Gog and Magog take place? I was always taught it took place in the tribulation and was probably associated with the battle of Armageddon, or if not, it would be connected with the battle of Gog and Magog after the millennium. So in studying this, I've found so many reasons to prove that that's not true. So let's look at Ezekiel 38 and try to come up with this conclusion. When does this take place? When does it take place? There's some things that are interesting. First of all, you have this military coalition. He said, the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, verse 1, Son of man, set thy face against Gog. Now, Gog is referring to a ruler, a person. Here in this passage of Scripture, Gog is a person, a personality, not a place. It's a personality. The land of Magog. So Magog identifies where the land is. Gog is the personality, the ruler, if you please. The chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. So he's the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. And prophesy against him. So it is a personality. God's speaking about a personality. Just so we'll kind of be ahead of the game. Magog, Meshech, and Tubal are in inferences or references to the northern country, far north, which would be around in the land of Russia, what was the old Soviet Union. And so Russia, Tubal, Meshech and Tubal, Magog. Gog is the personality, Magog, Meshech, and Tubal, the prince of Meshech and Tubal. So we're talking about Russia. So Russia is in this coalition. And say, thus saith the Lord God, behold, I am against thee, O Gog. So he's talking about a man, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. I will turn thee back, and I'll put hooks in your jaw, and I'll bring you forth in all your army horsemen, horses, and all them that are clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords. So he said there's a place up in the north, Russia, what we now know as Russia, a leader called Gog, that I'm going to put a hook in your jaw, and I'm going to draw you south to the land of Israel. He's going to put a hook in their jaw. He's going to draw them to Israel. Why? Because they're coming to get the spoils of Israel. Israel is a wealthy land. They're coming to get the spoils. Something creates a reason that they need the spoils of Israel. So he brings up a coalition that's going to be with him. In verse 5, Persia. So what is Persia? Obvious, Persia is Iran, modern day Iran. And Russia and Iran are already in a coalition. They already have agreements and covenants signed together. Iran has been supplying Russia with drones, and Russia has been backing up Iran, buying oil from Iran. China and Russia buys oil from Iran. So they're already in a union. Then Ethiopia. Now we know about modern day Ethiopia in Africa, but this is the word Cush, the Hebrew word Cush, which refers to the African part, the northern part of Africa. And most Bible scholars that I read and all the things that I've studied the last couple of weeks pretty well declare this area that they call Ethiopia or Cush somewhere around the northern part of Africa in the Muslim countries like Sudan, the large place called Sudan. So it's Muslim. The one thing unique about this, these are all Muslim countries except Russia, but there's a reason for that. So you got Ethiopia, which is basically modern day Sudan, northern Africa. Then you got Libya. Libya, no doubt, is modern day Libya, northern Africa, in that northern part, north of Israel. And some said it even could hold Tunisia and Armenia, some of those nations. But anyway, Libya. So we'll take that for what it is. With them, all of them with their shield and helmet. Then Gomer comes up. Gomer and Togarmah. Gomer and all his bands in the house of Togarmah. There's a lot of speculation. The older guys, like Dr. Charles Feinberg, he said there was a lot of things that would make you think that Gomer was modern-day Germany. Gomer and Togarmah would be Germany. But the modern guys, they've been around a long time since Feinberg has passed on and some of these older writers are gone. They are saying this is pretty well referring to modern-day Turkey, Togarmah, Turkey. The Baltic nations around south of Russia, between Russia and between the northern Africa and north of Israel, Turkey. And Turkey is a Muslim nation, and Turkey is, of course, not a friend of Israel, that is for sure. So most everybody, 95% of all those Bible scholars that teach that this is talking about Turkey. But it is talking about these Muslim nations. So basically, you've got Russia, you've got Iran, you've got Sudan, or at least northern Africa, you've got Libya, and you've got Gomer, Tagara, which is basically modern day Turkey. So now look what he said, be thou prepared, verse 7, and prepare thyself, all thy company that are assembled with thee. After many days, in verse 8, thou shalt be visited. In the latter years, thou shalt come into the land that is brought back from the sword and is gathered out of many people. Now get that, is gathered out of many people. You're going to come to the land that's been brought back from the sword and is gathered out of many people against the mountains of Israel. So the gathering out of many peoples must refer to the regathering of Israel. When did that take place? Israel did not become a nation until 1948. Since then, there's been a regathering into the land, the homeland, Israel. So these 5-nation coalitions, and there are possibly, because these references are so general, Libya could include other nations. Russia, we could call Russia, but it could include a lot of the other Baltic nations that were part of the Soviet Union, so we're just going to leave it at that. But there could be many more other Muslim nations that get involved in this. But for now, we'll just stick with these 5 nations that we mentioned. But they're going to come into the people that gathered out of many people against the mountains of Israel. Now, where are the mountains of Israel? You're talking about the northern part. They're coming from the north. So if they gather in the northern part of Israel up in the mountains, that's the Golan Heights. That's on the border of Libya, up on the border, the northern border headed toward Turkey, the Golan Heights, which have always been waste, and that's pretty well what that is. But he's brought forth out of the nations, and they shall dwell safely, all of them. Thou shalt ascend and come like a storm. So these 5-nation coalition is going to come from the north, and they're going to come in through the Golan Heights in the northern part, the northern border of Israel. And they'll come in like a cloud. That means there are going to be so many of them coming in, it's going to stir up dust. There's going to be a lot of signs of a large military force moving that way. It's in that wasteland of the mountains as they come across from the north, coming through that bare land, trying to come across the mountains of Israel. They're going to cover the land like a cloud, all thy bands and many people with thee. So it's going to be all these 5 nations and many other people with them. So there could be other nations that join with them that's not mentioned. Thus saith the Lord God, it also shall come to pass at the same time shall things come into thy mind, thou shalt think an evil thought, and thou shalt say, I will go to the land of unwalled villages. So that's referring to Israel, the unwalled villages. The towns there now do not have the city walls around them as they did in the older days. I'll go to them that are at rest. So there is implication that at this time when they come in, that Israel is going to be somewhat at rest. Now that's not true now. Then here comes the point about when is this going to take place. Some have said that it has to be during the tribulation, the first part, because Israel is at rest. In that peace treaty signed by the Antichrist, that Israel goes into a false peace treaty, so these nations are going to come down while Israel is at rest. There's a problem with that, and I'll tell you why in just a minute. But at some point, Israel's going to be at rest. Now, let's just stop here and talk about what's going on now. We got the war going on between Israel and Iran. If Israel does accomplish their goal of defeating Iran and chopping the head off of the snake of Iran, then there is a possibility that following this, that Israel could settle in for a time of peace because they've already took Hezbollah out. Hamas is all but they're just walking barely on one leg because they killed a lot of the leadership in Hamas and they've defeated wiped out a lot of Hamas. They have had a great damage done to the Houthi rebels, along with the U.S., dropping bombs on the Houthi rebels, and so they are not anymore a formidable foe as they have been. All of them are agents of Iran, funded by Iran, but with all of them out of the way, if they can finish up Gaza and get rid of Hamas, get rid of the Houthi rebels, Hezbollah is all but done away with or off the scene. If they can accomplish this in Iran to take away their capabilities of missile and nuclear weapons and can overthrow the Ayatollah and get back into what will be somewhat of a democracy or somewhat of a free country in Iran, at least not a terrorist country wanting to wipe Israel off the map, then Israel could go into a time of what we would call somewhat peace in the nation of Israel. That would be the setting for this to take place in chapter 38. That's just supposition. Verse 2, why are they coming down? To take a spoil, verse 12, to take prey, to turn thy hand upon the desolate places that are now inhabited, upon the people that are gathered out of the nation. There it is, talking about Israel. All these people that's been gathered out of all the nations that dwell in the midst of the land. And he mentions 3 nations here, Sheba, Dedan, and the merchants of Tarshish, with all the young lions thereof, shall say unto thee, are there come to take a spoil? These 3 nations are mentioned here, and they're somewhat in a defense of Israel, or they're not going against Israel, but they're looking at those that are coming against Israel, wondering why you're coming down here. And they mention somewhat of being an aid to Israel during this time. Now, I read a whole lot of stuff on this in the last few weeks, and I'm kind of intrigued by it. Tarshish, Tarshish, Jonah went to Tarshish, and that was a literal place. But some believe that Tarshish is possibly a reference to nations like Britain, because he's talking about at one time Britain was in control of the Middle East, what we know as Israel, and they were somewhat in control until they became an independent nation. And then he mentions the young lions, and we came out of Britain, and some believe that somehow or another that we would be a coalition, the U.S. and Britain and whoever Sheba and Dedan is. Been a lot of speculation about who those names are. And anyway, that there'd be a coalition, that we would be involved in helping to defend Israel or stand with Israel during this battle. That would make sense if that is so. That's just supposition. I'm not saying that's true. I'm just throwing this out for thought. Or thou come take a spoil, thou gathered, take a prey, to carry away silver, gold, cattle, and goods, take a spoil. Therefore, son of man, prophesy and say unto Gog. So we're back now prophesying to the person. Thus saith the Lord, in that day when my people Israel dwell safely, shalt thou not know it? For thou shalt come from all places out of the north parts, thou and many people with thee, all of them riding upon horses, a great company, mighty army. And thou shalt come up against my people Israel as a cloud to cover the land. It shall be in the latter days. So we know it's going to be at the end of what we know as the times of the Gentiles. So the latter days goes all the way into the tribulation period. So it could be now and it could be in the tribulation. But he says the latter days, and I'll bring thee against my land that the heathen may know me. He said, I'm going to do this so you're going to know me when I shall be sanctified in thee, O God, before their eyes. Everybody's going to see what I'm going to do to you. Everybody's going to know that I'm God. Thus saith the Lord God, art thou he of whom I have spoken in old time by the servants and prophets of Israel, which I prophesied in those days many years that I would bring thee against them. And it shall come to pass at the same time when God shall come against the land of Israel, saith the Lord, that my fury shall come up in thy face. So God says, when you come down, I'm going to release my fury on you, and all the world's going to know I'm God. For in my jealousy and in the fire of my wrath have I spoken. Surely in that day there shall be a great shaking in the land. Okay, here we are. The great shaking. Here's the first thing God's going to do. He's going to bring these 5 nations from the north, Russia. We're going to have Iran from the southeast. You're going to have northern Africa, Sudan area, Libya, and then Gomer, which is Tagarma, which is Turkey. So they're going to come together. They're going to meet in the northern part, the border of Israel and the Golan Heights and the mountain areas as a cloud, and God's going to come against them. And he said the first thing that's going to happen, there's going to be a shaking. So what is a shaking? That's an earthquake. There's going to be a mighty earthquake take place, and Israel is on one of the great faults, one of the great earthquake faults in that part of the country. A great fault runs right through that area. So they're going to be right over the fault line, gathered 5 nations, mighty armies, all types of military armor, all types of people from all nations coming from every direction, from the North Africa to the west, from Iran to the southeast, from Turkey just not too far north, and then from up in what we call in Russia, the far north. So they're coming together in the northern part in the mountains, which is the Golan Heights area. It's going to be a shaking so bad in verse 20 that the fish of the sea and the fowls of the air and the beasts of the field and all the creeping things that creep upon the earth and all the men that are upon the face of the earth shall shake at my presence. It's going to be an earthquake that the whole earth is going to know about this earthquake. It's going to be bad. And they shall shake at my presence. And the mountains shall be thrown down, and the steep places shall fall, and every wall shall fall to the ground. So God said the earthquake is going to be so severe that the mountains are going to fall. The whole earth is going to feel the shaking that I'm going to do to this part of the world where you've gathered against my people. And he said, even the fish and the creeping things, the fowls there, they're going to be affected. It's going to be the biggest earthquake man's ever experienced. Now watch this in verse number 21. Even the walls are going to fall. In verse 21, and I will call for a sword against him throughout all my mountains, saith the Lord, and every man's sword shall be against his brother. Okay, stop. What is God saying here? This is so unbelievable. God says, I'm going to take all of this coalition, the 5 nations, after this earthquake with this cloud coming out of all these 5 nations coming together to attack Israel. It's going to be like a cloud of dust, and then the earth is going to shake, and the mountains are going to fall, and every wall is going to fall. All the fowls of the air, the creeping things, everything's going to be affected. And while they're trying to get their act together during this great earthquake and afterwards, he said, I'm going to turn them on each other, and every brother's sword will be turned on his brother. So Russia and Libya and Turkey and Iran and Sudan are going to be in the northern part of Israel in the Golan Heights, and the mountains has been laid waste, and they're going to start fighting each other and killing each other. They were coming to attack Israel, and they're going to turn on each other. Verse 22. And I'll plead against them with pestilence and with blood. He's going to send pestilence. Blood's going to be running everywhere. Pestilence. Verse 22. And then I will rain upon him. Some say that's a physical rain. That while they're getting over an earthquake and they're turning their swords on each other and killing each other, God sends a pestilence. Then he says, I'm going to send a rain upon his bands, upon all of those troops. I'm going to send this unbelievable rain like the floods we've had in East Tennessee. And upon all the people that's with him, an overflowing rain, a flooding rain in those mountains of northern Israel. And then he says there's going to be great hailstones. God's going to let it hail. Hailstones and rain coming out of the sky. Earthquake has destroyed the ground underneath their feet. Rain's falling out of heaven. Hailstones are falling upon the troops, and they're fighting each other, and blood and pestilence is everywhere. And look what else he says in verse 22. And fire and brimstone. Now, some say that's literal fire and brimstone, but some say that this is a reference to what possibly could be nuclear war or some type of missile warfare. Because look what he says, that's why I magnify myself, sanctify myself, and I'll be known in the eyes of many nations, they shall know that I am the Lord. Either way, whether it's real fire and brimstone or whether it's the result of fire coming from some type of missile or some type of military nuclear war, he mentions it again in chapter 39, so that's why they seem to think it may be some type of missile or nuclear war because it affects other nations. Let's go to chapter 39. Therefore, thou son of man, prophesy against God, thus saith the Lord, behold, I am against thee. I'll turn thee back, verse 2, I'll leave but the sixth part. So all of them are going to be destroyed but the sixth part. 1/6 to be left out of all the people, all the thousands of hundreds of thousands in a 5-nation coalition, all of them's going to be destroyed but 1/6 of the people. I'll turn thee back, but the sixth part will cause thee to come up from the north parts, will bring thee upon the mountains of Israel. I'll smite thy bow out of thy left hand, cause thy arrows to fall out of the right hand. In other words, everything they try is not going to work. They're going to turn on each other. Their weapons aren't going to work. Thou shalt fall upon the mountains of Israel and all thy bands of the people that is with thee, and I'll give thee into the ravenous birds and the beasts of the field devour. So they're going to fall. Their bodies and carcasses will be in the mountains of the Golan Heights after an earthquake, after a pouring, flooding rain, after hail, and after fire and brimstone. In verse 5, they'll feed upon you in the open field. The Lord said, I've spoken it. And then he says in verse 6, I'll send a fire on Magog, and among them that dwell carelessly in the isles, they shall know that I'm the Lord. The isles or the islands or other nations. So not only is he going to destroy them down in the northern mountains of Israel, but he's going to send fire to Magog. That's the place. That's Russia. He's going to send fire to them. Could that be fire and brimstone of God, or could that be nuclear weapons? Could it be this coalition of he mentioned here, Sheba, Dedan, and Tarshish, and Israel, and the nations that are aligned with Israel, that they may go in a coalition, those that have nuclear weapons may go in a coalition against these nations to keep any more from coming out of Russia. And God sends fire to Russia and to the islands, other places like North Korea's an island, other nations that border the seas, the isles. God's going to send fire to them so they'll know he's God. He's going to destroy the armies that come against Israel and going to send fire to other nations. Verse number 6, 7. So I'll make my holy name known in the midst of all my people Israel, and I'll not let them pollute my holy name anymore. The heathen shall know that I am the Lord. Verse 8, behold, it is come, it is done, saith the Lord. This is the day I've spoken. They that dwell in the cities of Israel shall go forth and shall set on fire and burn the weapons, both the shields, the bucklers, the bow, the arrows, the handstaves, the spears. They shall burn them with fire 7 years. Stop. There's the first reference to time. So now here's the reason that this can't take place in the tribulation, beginning or mid or late tribulation, because they're going to burn all the weapons for 7 years. So if you have this happening during the tribulation, you don't have 7 years for them to burn it, because after the tribulation, they're going to go into the millennium. It's going to be cleaned up, and they're going to worship in the millennium. Things are going to be put back to normal, and so they can't have it going over to the millennium. You can't have it in the millennium, them burning weapons for 7 years. Why would they do that? Why would anybody try to burn and destroy anything at the end of the millennium? Because as soon as the millennium's over, it's going to be the great white throne, then God's going to make a new heaven, new earth. Why would he tell the people to clean up all the mess when he's going to make a new earth? So it's not going to happen at the end of the millennium. This is not what's going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen at the end of the trib or the middle of the trib, because you don't have 7 years for these things to burn. Okay? And then also it goes on to say in verse 10, They'll take no wood out of the field, neither cut down any of the forest, for they shall burn the weapons with fire. They shall spoil them that spoiled, and rob them that robbed. Shall come to pass in that day, verse 11, I'll give unto Gog a place. There are the graves in Israel, the valley of the pastures of the east sea. And it shall stop the noses of the pasture. There shall be a place to bury Gog and his multitude. They shall call the place the valley of Magog. And 7 months shall the house of Israel be burying them. So not only 7 years to burn the weapons, but 7 months to bury all of them. In the valley of Hammon, it's going to be called Magog as a city. So I don't think this can take place in the tribulation because of the 7 years and the 7 months. I just don't think it's going to happen because Antichrist is going to be in control. And I just don't think Antichrist is going to allow Israel to burn all those weapons for 7 years. And I don't think he's going to allow them to bury all that crowd for 7 months. And besides, it's going to be peace the first 3.5 years. It's not enough time. So if it's not in the millennium and it's not at the end or middle of the tribulation, then when does this take place? Let's go on, verse number 12. All the people of the land shall bury them. It shall be renowned to the day that I shall be glorified. It shall sever out men. So this is basically the end that I want to cover here. So we know there's 5 nations coming down against Israel. It's going to be during a time when Israel's at rest. And then God's going to destroy them with a cataclysmic intervention. Israel's not going to have to fight them. God's going to destroy them with, first of all, an earthquake. And then he's going to send rain. He's going to send hailstones. He's going to turn them on each other. They're going to kill each other. There's going to be blood, and there's going to be pestilence. And then, hey, Brother Jeff, still good to see you, buddy. And then there's going to be, after that, there's going to be fire and brimstone. So God's going to destroy them with a cataclysmic intervention. After that's over, it's going to take 7 years for Israel to burn all the weapons and the equipment that they left in the mountains of the Golan Heights, the northern mountains of Israel. All these 5-nation coalitions that came to fight Israel, and God destroyed them with his hand, a cataclysmic intervention, earthquake, rain, turn on each other, hail, fire, and brimstone. They're done away with, only 1/6 of them left. Then, besides the burning for 7 years, burning all their weapons, everything that's been left, then they're going to take and they're going to bury them, take 7 months. Now, some implied the reason that had to be 7 years in burning them is because there is going to be nuclear war involved some way or another, nuclear weapons, and so it's 7 years to purge the land. I don't know. I'm just telling you what I've read and what people are saying. These are just what preachers and theologians say. So here's some things to think about. In chapter 37, Ezekiel, Israel is redeemed and brought back out of the land of captivity, and the promise that God's going to once again build a new temple, and he's going to worship in the millennium. He's going to set up a 1,000-year reign. That's chapter 37. Chapter 40 starts the millennium. So you got chapter 38 and 39. There is a battle of a 5-nation coalition. Now, we know the 5-nation coalition cannot be the Battle of Armageddon, because the Battle of Armageddon consists of the Antichrist and all the armies of the Antichrist, not just 5 nations. We also know it can't be the Battle of Gog and Magog in Revelation 20, because that is the armies of Satan with all the nations of the world that follow after Satan after he's released out of the bottomless pit for a short season. So this cannot be that battle. So this battle is a different battle. The Battle of Armageddon takes place at the end of the 7-year tribulation. When Jesus comes back at the second coming, he will destroy the battles and armies of the Antichrist with all the armies of the Antichrist, of the false prophet and the beast. And he will absolutely destroy them. And then we will have the great white throne judgment. And then, of course, after that, you'll have the millennium. All of this, at the millennium first, then the great white throne judgment. But the millennium starts immediately after the tribulation, millennium for 1,000 years, and then the great white throne, and then the new heaven, new earth. So the Battle of Armageddon takes place at the second coming, Revelation 19, Jesus against Antichrist and his armies. The Battle of Gog and Magog in Revelation 20 takes place at the end of the millennium, a 1,000-year reign. Satan's released and a great following follow him, and God destroys the armies of Satan. But the Battle of Gog and Magog is a 5-nation coalition that comes down from the north to attack Israel. And this is absolutely, Phyllis, I will send you my address after this is over. I'll PM you my address. This is absolutely got to be some other time between the millennium and it cannot be the tribulation at the middle and the end. So here's what I think. Here's the four views. Let me give you the four views. It's 735. The first view is it's the middle of the week of tribulation, the middle of Daniel's 70th week. But if it happens in the middle of tribulation, you don't have 7 years to burn all this, so 7 years you don't have enough. The second view is this near the end of tribulation, right around the time of the Battle of Armageddon. That's a battle that takes place about the same time Armageddon does. That don't make sense. Why would you have two battles? And it just doesn't fit. And then a third view is that it takes place during the transition from Armageddon, between Armageddon and when Christ returns. There'll be a space in between that, and this battle could take place then. There again, the problem is 7 years to burn all the armies and the weapons, 7 years to bury them. I just don't see that happening. And the fourth one is at the close of the millennium, that when Satan is loosed, and this is basically that battle of Gog and Magog. But it doesn't fit because this is a 5-nation coalition, and the battle of Gog and Magog in Revelation 20 is a coalition of nations from all over the world. These are from the north, and these in Revelation 20 is from all over the world, and they follow Satan, not Gog. The leader here is Gog, a personality called Gog. Satan is not Gog. Gog is a person, a ruler of the land of Meshech and Tubal. That's Russia. So, we know what it's not, so when can it be? Okay, here's my personal opinion. Take it for what it's worth. I'm not going to get mad at you if you disagree, and I'm not going to argue with you if you disagree. Don't send me a bunch of messages telling me I'm wrong. Just take it, believe what you believe. I believe that the battle of Gog and Magog more than likely has to take place before the rapture. Now, here's the only problem with that happening. Israel has got to be at a time of peace when this takes place. Is that possible? Sure. I think it's more possible now than ever. If Israel continues doing what they're doing and they destroy the ability of Iran to continue being the terrorist of the Middle East, if they take away their missile capabilities and their nuclear capabilities, Hamas and Hezbollah has already been defanged, if you please. And the Houthi rebels are all but defanged. By the time Israel and the U.S. gets through with them, they're going to be defanged because they're not going to have the support of Iran. Iran's going to be broke, and they're going to have no missiles to send them. So it's very possible that sometime shortly, Israel could complete the mission against Iran. The U.S. may be brought into this. They may be brought into this. If it is, it is. The only reason they'd be brought in because the one big nuclear place in Iran that can't be destroyed by Israel's airplanes is that one big place where most of the nuclear warheads are being developed, and it's a half a mile under a mountain. It's going to take those 30,000-pound bunker bombs to go down and under that mountain to destroy that place, and our B-2 bombers, stealth bombers, are the only one that can do that. So they cannot afford to stop this war and leave Iran with the capability to continue developing their nuclear weapons. So all of the nuclear capabilities have got to be destroyed. If not destroyed, they've got to come up with agreement of Iran. They've got to do so much damage to Iran in the next few weeks that Iran finally concedes and says, look, take everything out, take all the nuclear out of our country. We don't want it. We want to have peace. We want our people to eat. We want to have our ability to have energy and have food to eat. So take all the nuclear, and we will not have it anymore. If they do that, then they have nothing to worry about. But if that happens, or if they destroy it, then Israel could, within the next little while, go through a time of peace. And that could be the time because Russia has already got a hook in its jaw. If Russia's not stopped in its aggressive act against Ukraine, Russia will not be hard to pull them down against Israel if Iran is taken off the scene. Because Iran and Russia are together. If Iran is defanged and decapitated, then Russia would have more of a reason to come because of oil and because of the wealth of Israel and because of their hatred. And so it'd be very easy for them to join a coalition of Muslim nations against Israel and come south. But it's got to be when Israel is in a time of peace, and that's what chapter 38 and 39 says. So that could possibly happen now. We could be watching that come to reality, come to fruition right now. So I'm just telling you, after studying, I was taught a different way totally. But I really believe in my heart. Now, that brings up a point that I don't like to bring up. But if this has to take place before the rapture, then we've got something that we know that Jesus isn't coming yet because this hasn't taken place. And Jesus can come at any moment. And he said that. So I'm not going to lock God into this because Jesus could come now and this not be fulfilled. And it wouldn't change God because God's still God. And this could happen the first week after the rapture takes place. I do know this. It's either got to take place before the rapture or just shortly right thereafter the rapture when the treaty is signed and Israel is in a false peace. And then they move down. It still is a problem with time. 7 years, but just a few months or 6 months overlapping into the millennium is going to be a lot to clean up after Armageddon anyway. So it could be if it happens right after the rapture, I wouldn't have a problem with that. Because I don't have a problem anyway because God's going to be God. He'll do what he wants to do. But in my thinking of trying to understand Scripture, I've tried to figure this out and it just don't fit at the end of the tribulation and it don't fit in the middle of the tribulation. But it does fit before the tribulation, before the rapture. And it does fit right after the rapture if it happens shortly thereafter during the false peace treaty and gives them a time to have peace and then Russia is hooked and brought south with 4 other nations. That would not be anything I would be upset with. So that's Ezekiel 38 and 39. I've got a lot I want to deal with, but I'm already out of time. And I wasn't going to deal with this tonight, but the more I studied, the more I was impressed with the Lord. And so many people are asking questions, and I feel like I need to put my input into this. And I believe you and I are agreement, DR. I believe we're agreeing on this. And I know Ron Demeline, he agrees. There's been several other guys I've talked to. We all have talked this over and over. And I just think it has to happen before the rapture. But if it doesn't, I won't be disappointed. But I won't feel like I've been wrong. But I think if it doesn't happen before the rapture, it's got to happen shortly thereafter the rapture during the false peace treaty within the first 6 months because of the time. But either way, these 5 nations are coming, and Russia's going to be destroyed by the cataclysmic intervention, divine intervention of God. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this. It's just a lot of information, and I encourage you to study your Bibles. I would give you some books to look up and reference, but all the books I've got are guys from back almost before Israel was a nation, and all of their stuff is so outdated, even though it's only 60, 70 years old, is outdated. Most of it, especially before the Iron Curtain fell with Russia. So they were thinking a whole different thing back then. So this is all different. So I don't have any new commentaries or new writers. Everything I've found is stuff I'm finding from preachers and videos and stuff that are current. And so I'm trying to be as updating. Everything I've found is basically what I'm finding myself and studying the Scriptures with a concordance in my Bible open. And I believe this is the best I can interpret it. So I hope it gives you some answers. I hope it does clean up maybe some areas of your thinking about it. So pray, study, stay in the book, keep studying, keep looking up Jesus. I do know this for sure. I'm not sure about a lot of things. I'm sure about this. The Lord's coming and it's going to be soon. Amen. I love you. I'll see you back again Wednesday morning. May see you tomorrow a little bit, but see you Wednesday for sure. God bless you. I love y'all.